Sidney Starr just found out she won't be going home anytime soon. After weeks of fighting to get out of jail, a judge denied her bond and ordered her back behind bars. But it was Sidney's reaction to the decision that quickly became the biggest moment in the courtroom. Here's what happened. Sidney Starr walked into the Fulton County Courthouse on the morning of August 25, wearing the weight of 3 weeks in custody. She'd been sitting in the Fulton County jail since her arrest at the start of the month, and this hearing was the one her defense team had been fighting to get for days. 2 separate attorneys had filed motions on her behalf, one arguing she couldn't afford anything beyond a nominal bond because she was indigent, another pushing for an expedited release built around her clean record and her roots in Chicago. Her public defender filed the first bond motion on Aug. 6, arguing she couldn't afford anything beyond a nominal bond because she's indigent, while a second attorney filed a separate petition the next day pushing for an expedited release or a quicker hearing, citing her lifelong ties to Chicago and clean record. She had 2 hearings scheduled back-to-back that day, a preliminary hearing in magistrate court followed by the bond hearing in Superior Court before Judge Cox. By the time the second hearing got underway, the room was packed with reporters, cameras, and family on both sides of the case. Her legal team leaned hard into character. Starr described herself as having no criminal history and said she'd lived in Chicago her whole life, pointing to her television career as proof she wasn't a flight risk. Favors' defense argued that her general good nature and family ties to Georgia made her no significant flight risk, and the judge acknowledged that Favors has no prior criminal history. But the state wasn't backing down. The senior assistant district attorney handling the case, Dion Peoples, didn't mince words about what he thought the charges represented. He argued the heinousness of the crimes alleged, along with the fact that Sidney Starr Favors' lives in Chicago poses a significant risk to her leaving town. Prosecutors weren't just worried about her skipping town either. The judge also found that Favors' large social media presence could create a risk of witness intimidation or interference in the case. That's a detail worth sitting on, a judge on the record saying that Starr's platform, the same one that made her famous, was now being treated as a liability in a felony case. Then came the moment that turned the room. The mother of the alleged victim stood up and addressed the court directly. She didn't read from a prepared script full of legal language. She spoke as a parent. He is required to attend intensive therapy to begin a healing process for what was done to him. At this age, when he should feel safe, innocent, and protected, he is now forced to cope with trauma that no child should have to ever endure. The victim's mother said when addressing the court. She kept going, describing how the last 3 weeks had reshaped her entire household. We'll do anything possible to remain strong for our child, but our family feels as though our sense of safety and normalcy has been taken away, she told the judge. One outlet that had a reporter inside the courtroom described the scene bluntly. The courtroom got emotional before the gavel came down, and the victim's mother addressed the court directly, explaining why she wanted bond denied, and said her 13-year-old son is now in therapy. That's the atmosphere Starr was sitting in when the judge finally spoke. Every plea from her lawyers, every argument about her ties to family, her lack of a record, her career, all of it ran into a wall the moment the ruling came down. While the judge acknowledged Starr has no prior criminal history, her bond was ultimately denied. None of it moved the needle Tuesday. For a woman who had spent 3 weeks telling anyone who would listen that she wasn't going anywhere, that ruling landed like a verdict on her freedom. She wasn't going home. She was going back to a cell indefinitely, while a case that could define the rest of her life crawled through the system. Watching a courtroom full of strangers and cameras absorb that news alongside her, it's not hard to understand why the moment cracked something in the room. To understand the weight of that ruling, you have to go back to the beginning of August, to a hotel just outside Atlanta, and to the version of Sidney Starr the public thought they knew. Sidney Starr, legal name Sidney Favors, wasn't a stranger to television before any of this. The reality TV star was known for her roles on Love and Hip Hop, New York, Baddies ATL, and Atlanta Plastic. Starr was a supporting cast member on Season 9 of Love and Hip Hop, New York from 2018-2019. She'd built a following well beyond that one show. 2 Favors is known for appearances on Love and Hip Hop and Baddies ATL, and has nearly 500,000 followers on Instagram. She was also known, before any of this, for a very different kind of headline: the fabricated claims about a relationship with rapper Chingy that she later admitted weren't true. That history mattered to some observers because it meant Starr had already been through the court of public opinion once before. This time was different. This time, however, the dispute will be decided inside a courtroom, where prosecutors bear the burden of proving the allegations beyond a reasonable doubt. The chain of events that brought her to that Tuesday hearing started on August 2 at an Embassy Suites hotel just off International Boulevard in Hapeville, near Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. A reality television personality was arrested Sunday in Hapeville on multiple felony charges related to an alleged sexual assault involving a juvenile, police said. Officers with the Hapeville Police Department responded Aug. 2 to the Embassy Suites at 3450 International BLVD, where the investigation led to the arrest of Sydney Favors, also known as Sidney Starr. The charges were serious from the jump. Favors was charged with sexual battery against a child under 16, aggravated child molestation and sodomy, according to court records. According to her arrest warrants, 37-year-old Favors allegedly confessed to performing oral sex on a boy at the hotel, claiming the act was consensual. Consent, of course, isn't a defense when a minor is involved, and that's part of what makes this case so combustible. Details that surfaced later painted a fuller picture of the encounter. A prosecutor said the 13-year-old told investigators he was in the hotel lobby when Favors approached him and told him he was cute. From there, according to the account laid out in court, things moved quickly. Favors claimed that she engaged in sexual contact with a person Favors identified as Larry, and the investigator said that Larry was a juvenile child who then exited the room afterward, with the unidentified juvenile identifying Favors. Favors admitted to police that the juvenile had gone into the elevator with them and then went into their room. Her defense on that point has stayed consistent. According to police accounts, Starr told officers the person claimed to be 18, though his parents later said he was younger than 16. Officers didn't just take statements, they searched her. Police discovered an opened condom in Starr's pocket during a pat-down search after her arrest, according to newly released police records. That detail spread fast once the arrest report became public, adding another layer to an already ugly set of allegations. From there, Starr was booked and transported into custody. Favors was taken into custody and transported to the Fulton County Jail, authorities said. Because of who she is, her time behind bars looked different from a typical booking. Love and Hip Hop star Sidney Starr is locked up in a special section of the Fulton County Jail due to her identifying as a trans woman, TMZ has learned. Sidney was transferred to the Vulnerable Population Unit for the LGBTQ community after she was arrested Sunday and booked for sexual assault charges. Within a day of that booking photo circulating, Starr made her first public move, not a court filing, but a statement to the press. In a statement to TMZ, the Love and Hip Hop, New York, Alum said she unequivocally denies the allegations against her and intends to vigorously defend herself through the legal process. She went further, pushing back on the idea that public opinion should get ahead of the legal process. Her statement continued, allegations should not be mistaken for fact, and public opinion should never replace due process. She also used the moment to address something bigger than her own case, saying she hoped the accusations against her wouldn't be turned into a referendum on an entire community. Sidney also said the case should not be viewed as a reflection of the transgender community, stressing one person's alleged actions should never be used to judge or stigmatize an entire group. Her family rallied around her almost immediately. Her mother, Stephanie Favors, told reporters the allegations didn't line up with the daughter she knew. Sidney Starr's mom says she was blindsided by recent child sex allegations against the reality TV star, telling TMZ this is not who her daughter is, and she fully stands behind her. Stephanie made clear she wasn't just offering polite support. She said the accusations were completely out of character for Sidney and that she didn't believe them. That's the backdrop Starr carried into every hearing that followed, a mother defending her character, a legal team building a flight risk argument around her ties to Chicago, and a set of felony charges that grew heavier with every new detail released to the public. Once the bond was denied, the practical reality set in fast. Starr wasn't walking out of that courthouse. She was heading back to the same custody she'd been in since the start of the month, only now with no release date on the horizon. The decision means Starr will remain in custody as her case moves forward through the Georgia court system. The state had recommended a no-bond status for the Love and Hip Hop alum, who has been charged with sodomy, sexual battery against a child under 16, and aggravated child molestation. For the family on the other side of the case, the ruling was the outcome they'd asked for, but it didn't erase what they said their son was still living through. The mother's testimony painted, as one outlet put it, emotional testimony that painted a picture of a family torn apart. Her plea wasn't really about Starr's flight risk on paper. It was about a 13-year-old boy who, according to his mother, is going to therapy and trying to find his footing again. That's the part of this story that doesn't get resolved by a bond ruling. A judge can decide where someone sleeps at night. He can't undo what a family says has already happened. Starr, for her part, hasn't stopped pushing her own version of events. Even as the hearing closed with her losing the fight for release, she used her moment in front of the court to reassert who she believes she is. She has maintained her innocence since day one, saying in a statement following her arrest that she unequivocally denies the allegations and plans to fight the case through the courts, and used the moment to speak on the bigger picture, hoping one person's alleged actions wouldn't translate to judgment on an entire community. There's also the matter of what got said in that room about her own life outside the case, her platform, her television career, her hundreds of thousands of followers. All of it now sitting inside a legal record, as evidence prosecutors used to argue she was a risk rather than proof of stability. That's a strange turn for someone whose entire public identity was built on visibility. The same reach that made her a recognizable face on Love and Hip Hop, Baddies ATL, and Atlanta Plastic became, in this courtroom, a reason to keep her locked up. What happens next is procedural, but it's not small. The case has been formally handed off for prosecution, and it isn't going away quietly. The case has been referred to the Fulton County District Attorney's Office for prosecution. That means depositions, evidence hearings, and eventually a trial, one where the stakes are no longer just about a night in a hotel room, but about years of Starr's life. Bond denials in Georgia felony cases involving allegations against minors tend to keep defendants in custody for the duration of pretrial proceedings, sometimes for many months, which means the version of Sidney Starr the public saw walk into that Fulton County courtroom on Tuesday may be the last time she's seen outside a jail uniform for a long while. The legal process her statement promised to lean on is still ahead of her, the trial where prosecutors have to prove every one of those felony counts beyond a reasonable doubt, not just to a judge weighing Bond, but to a jury deciding her guilt. For now, though, the ruling that sent her back into custody is the only verdict that exists on paper. It wasn't a finding of guilt. It was a decision about risk, about safety, about whether a courtroom believed she'd show up again if given the chance to leave. And on that question, the answer that came down from the bench was final enough to end her fight for freedom, at least for now, and heavy enough that everyone who watched her hear it said the same thing. The room felt the weight of it as much as she did.